Hi everyone, welcome to Rolling Airways, Rolling Stories. This is a podcast where we speak with leaders as well as experts in the field of future of work as well as HR technology. And in today's format, we'll be speaking with Mr. Sharma Lachu. He is currently the founder and group CEO of Accendo Capital, an investment holding company that owns and operates companies focusing on various aspects of human capital management in Southeast Asia. He also serves as the managing director of one of the companies and is an executive director of the other two. Prior to his current role, he serves and still serves as the founder and CEO of Accendo Technologies, a HR analytic and talent intelligence company which he founded in 2008. Sharma, welcome onto the show.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Adrian.
So to really jump straight into this conversation, I do understand you have shared previously before and talked about this item called the invisible leakage, which really got me intrigued because, well, to be honest, it's the first time I've heard of that term. Could you help to explain to the audience what exactly is the invisible leakage and why should companies be concerned about it?
Very heavy question for the first one, but thank you very much for that. And I think the way I look at invisible leakage is the premise of everything Accendo does, right? Companies spend a lot of money hiring a lot of these consulting companies to come in and do an audit on what they call visible leakage of the organization, theft, so on and so forth, right? The invisible leakage, the way Accendo looks at this and the way Accendo practices invisible leakage is the delta between where someone needs to be when they take on a role against where they typically are when they get the job. And sometimes to no fault of their own, right? Then we go back a little bit and see why this delta often exists. And it's a function of, very often biased decisions that get made through a historical journey of the organization, or just not having enough data to be able to make the right decisions, or just bad decisions being made as a cumulative effort of the organization not having the right skill set to make good decisions. And that then becomes a big problem because what people don't realize, let's take an organization of say 20,000 people. You take just 10% of let's say invisible leakage only exists in 10% of that organization. That's 2,000 roles. Now let's even be more conservative. Say this organization is really good at making decisions, 1%, right? That's 200 roles within the organization. And if you take 200 people in an organization that are making suboptimal decisions for years and years because they're in a position typically between 2 to 5 years. Let's take an average of 3, and let's just say you make 40 decisions a year, 40 suboptimal decisions a year. You compound that, right? That's 120 suboptimal decisions over 3 years times 200 people in an organization. The impact of that to the organization is hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars. So, that's the invisible leakage that organizations very often don't see because of the suboptimal decisions they make about people that start from a very early stage.
And based on your focus as well as extensive study in this area, how prevalent invisible leakage, and does it differ from industry to industry as well as across different countries around this part of the world?
So I think it's a function of the human mind, right? So there's a lot of studies that already prove that the human mind is very average at making decisions. We think we are amazing at making decisions. The human mind has been proven to be very average at making decisions. So when you don't allow the compounding effect of scientific decision making to supplement your decision making, then these things start becoming very prevalent. Where we see this becoming a bigger problem is where you have very hierarchical, patriarchal structures. And where there is very high power distance within the organization. That's where you see this becoming more and more prevalent. In a more open, transparent organization or culture, this becomes a lot less prevalent because people are able to question this. There's a lot of transparency in the way decisions are made. So there is a spectrum in which you see this, and even within Asia, and you see some organizations are doing a lot better than others. So I'll not try and get too detailed into this, but let me share with you a anecdotal story. Try and refrain from mentioning any client names here. So we were doing work for this huge organization and wonderful organization, right? So they do a lot of wonderful things. And this is a public listed company somewhere in and around Southeast Asia. And this company is, just for some context, is several billions of US dollars worth. So this is supposed to be a very mature, sophisticated business. And we were running this project for the client to be able to identify their next successor for a specific position. After many hours of the final deliberation, we go through the round of finalization, right? So we're going, okay, Director A, you okay with this? Director B, are you okay with this? And as we're going through this journey, everyone seems to be endorsing this particular candidate. Then the chairman, in passing, right, he doesn't say anything bad, doesn't say anything good, right? Just in passing says, hey, don't you think something's wrong with this candidate? He always wears pink. That's all the chairman says, right? He doesn't say, look, I don't think this person is not suitable for the job. He doesn't say this person, is nothing bad, right? Just says, don't you think something's not right with this candidate? He wears pink all the time. And you see immediately, because the chairman has said that, how each director slowly starts finding faults in this person and says, hey, actually, if you think about it, maybe this person's not right because of this. If you think about it, and just like that, a person who was extremely capable of doing the job lost the opportunity to become to hold a certain position in this organization.
What do you think could be done to help them see things in a different light, especially for directors below them who do feel that such data-driven approach is really game-changing and should be something that they want to infuse within the company? Because when it comes to a lot of adoption of processes, technology, solution, etc., one of the issue is always change management. And I'm not talking about managing down, I'm talking about managing up. How do you convince your CEO, your chairman, this is the way to go? Based on your experience, what are some advice you may have for people who wants to go through this process but do not know how to convince upper level?
So I won't call it advice. So let me share some of my experiences and how we've seen really good organizations run this upward management journey. So at the end of the day, I always say this, right? Technology can never be the be-all, end-all of any decision-making process. And that's one of the biggest fallacy in this whole digitization conundrum. Right? Everybody wants to buy a piece of technology and they feel because they've bought technology, they are now digital. The first place you start with digital is really the people. So I've got a PPT journey, right? Not PowerPoint, a people, process, technology mindset for change. Right? So the first thing you change is the people, then the process, and then you acquire the technology that comes and helps through that journey. So when you talk about this environment, very often, you've got to create a sense of how you make decisions through this process. And once you identify that there is bias, now bias is there for everybody, you, me, it's our fight or flight spectrum, right? So we've got to have bias to realize whether or not we survive. So you cannot run away from having bias. What you can try and run away from is be very, very cognizant of the bias that you have. So when you start from that process, then you're able to start creating processes or implement processes that then help the technology, and this is the very important part, augment the experience you have with it, right? So I am, for one, do not believe that technology should take over the decision-making process. Very often that becomes the biggest problem, right? The resistance of people against technology is this whole unilateral decision-making ability, right? For two reasons. Sometimes a weaker leader is one who often says, hey, it's not me, the system says I cannot do this, right? And you see this from everything from performance reviews to bonus conversations or to coaching conversations. It's not me. I really like you, Adrian. The system says I can't do this, so I cannot, right? Instead of having a deeper conversation about it. So I think when you're able to use the data that comes, and again, it doesn't have to be system oriented. I always joke and say the world's biggest HR system is Microsoft Excel. So if you can use Microsoft Excel well, there is then everything can be based on that first, right? So if you're able to understand the data from that perspective, then everything else becomes a lot easier. So you're able then to augment that experience or that journey of decision making with the human experience. So you don't try and take over the process. Very often people become rebellious against technology or don't want to use this because they feel a sense of the lack of control of this journey, right? So when you show that, look, I'm not trying to take anything away from you, all I'm doing is empowering you to make better, smarter, quicker decisions, then they embrace it a lot quicker. One place this often comes up, and I often refer to myself as a failed sports enthusiast. And I love playing football. I cycle a lot. I play badminton. And one thing I really take from a lot of this is the way they use analytics and data in trying to make people better every day, right? And if we can take that component of, or that mindset of how athletes and sports organizations use data to make athletes better every day, then implementing that into a workforce becomes a lot easier. Career pathing is a function of allowing transparency in the organization. So it's not as easy as we want it to be, right? Everyone thinks career pathing is a brilliant tool, is something that absolutely needs to happen. But how many organizations are ready for them to be able to say, look, I'm going to be vulnerable and open up and say, here's the journey in which most people can take to achieve their optimal state. And when they do, I'm going to be able to start supporting them through this process. Right? We're having some very, very interesting conversations with companies in the Valley where this is absolutely the case, right? And then we're having conversations with people closer to home where you see panic in their face when you talk about this level of transparency in the organization. So I think it's a function of, I want to have these things. I now need to be able to allow for processes to start kicking into place to make sure these things are rolled out properly. The other part about talent mobility, this is very, very important. I have the view that, retention and people staying in your organization is a function of, like Hollywood. Like when Hollywood makes a movie, people come together, they make an amazing movie, and then they go away to do other things. And if you've treated them really well while making this movie, the next movie you create, most of the people will come back in together. Right? So think about that from a project perspective within the organization. That really is talent mobility, to be able to expose people with micro projects within the organization. The biggest problem in this is the politics managers play in deciding whether or not to allow their staff to move out for a while, right? So until that gets solved, I think these things are very nice to have, but we need to figure out how to make it an absolute necessity.
Thank you so much. For people who are keen to learn more about what you just mentioned, as well as yourself, where can they go to?
Well, accendotechnologies.com. I'm on LinkedIn, Sharma Lachu. I'm available. Please feel free to get in touch with me. Always happy to have a chat.
Thank you so much for coming on to the show today, Sharma. Lovely speaking with you.
My pleasure, Adrian. Very happy to talk to you.